Yo, what's up? What's up? Hopefully you guys can hear me. This your guy Ray Hanma, one versus a million. Oh shit. Hopefully you guys can hear me. This your guy Ray Hanma, one versus a million. This is the Hanma Force. And tonight is the Hanma Force movie night slash anime night. And yeah, so this stream is just to gather some people, to bring them to the Rumble. For there may be a time where I may end up showing some episodes. Probably not for this season. I may show a little bit of episodes on YouTube to see what YouTube does. But yeah, especially those on the YouTube side, come over to Rumble, hit the follow, and yeah, so you can be alerted whenever I start the live. So I'm plotting to start it up soon as after I'm done with this. So therefore, not to make my little monologue and all that long, because I have some videos I just came across from the brothers, the people, from the good people of Marvel. I mean, marvelous videos and marvelous anime. That team, that whole team. Shout out to you guys. Amen. God bless you. Even though there's others that come out with the same geek verse info. So yeah, so therefore, and that's what we're gonna do with this stream. You know, to getting ready for the anime night when we watch Kingdom. We're gonna start back from where was that? Which is yeah, we ended off at episode 10, I believe. Yeah, episode 10, and now we're gonna be going off from episode 11 to episode 20. All right, so yeah, so this is gonna be a good, decent ass show. Period. Like this franchise is like fucking awesome. I'm reckon hopefully the movie. Um, Hopefully the movie does it some justice. The actual like live movie. And so yeah, so some of the stuff that I came across from marvelous videos and marvelous anime, and some videos that I want to see that I would like to share with my fellow brethren, with my fellow my geek brethren. Amen. Yeah, so you guys may end up taking an interest in it as well. So because in what I'm about to share, hell, all of what I shared generally has a super big ass fan base, unless I'm coming out to you, with some shit that just hit the airwaves, and people have just started like covering videos about it and shit, you know. But even though the percentage of people ain't didn't grew yet, but but it's not going to take long for people when some news come out of a game or a movie or a show or whatever it is, motherfuckers are on it. Like, yeah, so it's good to get in early in that, whenever you can. So, as I need to take my own advice with that as well. But yeah, and speaking of the geek verse, I'm liking from what I'm seeing with Dying Light, new Dying Light. Shout out to the Dying Light team, the Dying Light, the Beast, because that shit is awesome. Let me tell you, man. Yeah, because before I get it, before I get certain games, I watch a few of my bros, their gameplay, and to see how it is, because I don't like wasting money on these damn games. I don't know about y'all, because these motherfuckers are costly as fuck. So yeah, as a shit can rank up. But yeah, um, so I will be showing some shit, and hopefully you guys will like it, because yeah, in these videos, this is the first time of me seeing these videos, except for this one that I'm about to play, which is from good old rock stars, and shout out to them, and fair use. The content thus I am about to share, Ray Hama and the Hama Force do not own. It belongs to the respected owners. So yeah. I was wanting to find. Let's see if I can work with this. Yep. I think it's this one. Let's share this first. Takes a minute for these things to load. Huh. Give me a minute, y'all. Because I got so much shit loaded up on here. All these episodes. Yeah, because I'm trying to fly and get through this, man. Shit. Through these seasons with y'all so y'all can see and, just share with you guys the awesomeness of this show, so in hopes, hey, you can be immersed in it like me and countless of other fans are. So, and just absorbing the masculinity and the man mode principles through this motherfucker. Through the anime kingdom I'm talking about. But this news, the geek news I have is not related to Kingdom, but like I said, the stream is to bring cats through. So yeah, let's go.
It's me. Sees me.
And like I said, this one is from New Rockstars, so shout out to them and fair use.
Hello there, folks. You're just in time for yet another.
Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Eric Voss, and this is a breakdown of the new gameplay trailer for Marvel's Wolverine, the new Insomniac game coming in 2026, finally! While New Rockstars might be better known for covering nerdy movies and TV, hey, if something's Marvel and if it looks this good and has a coin flip's chance to snicked into an adjacent Spider-Man IP, then you better believe we're gonna break down the Easter eggs of said thing. So I'm gonna go through this Wolverine gameplay trailer frame by frame for everything you might have missed, because there are quite a few Easter eggs in this. And if you love Marvel anything, I'm wearing the shirt Tom Holland happened to be wearing in set videos for Spider-Man Brand New Day, a shirt for Delmar's Deli, the place with the best bodega cat in the MCU. And if you want to grab one of these shirts over at nerdriot.shop from our exclusive merch store, it's really the best way you can support what we're doing here at New Rockstars. Okay, Insomniac first announced Marvel's Wolverine in the PlayStation Showcase event in September 2021 with a bit of teaser footage that showed us Wolverine from behind and a close-up of his knuckles when he was sitting at the bar called the Princess Bar of Madripoor that we see the outside of in this new trailer. At the time, the developers of Marvel's Wolverine suggested that the standalone game shares continuity with the Insomniac Marvel Spider-Man games, but we don't know for sure how connected it will be to those storylines. The game has been delayed for so long that some fans begin to lose hope, but then this week on September 24th at State of Play, Sony announced that it would release on PS5 in fall fall 2026. Liam McIntyre is playing James Logan Howlett, aka Wolverine, in this game, making him the second Australian to play the Canadian mutant superhero. The gameplay trailer opens with a bit of a teaser to the rest of the footage, including a close-up of Wolverine's blood-stained face as he growls, and I love how you can make out all the tiny indentations in the pores of his face. Next, we see Logan in a different outfit stabbing his claws up through this cybernetically enhanced dude. This is a Reaver. The Reavers are the cybernetic enforcers from throughout the X-Men comics, and technically the group of mercenaries led by Boyd Holbrook's Donald Pierce in the 2017 Logan film. Yeah, those were Reavers. The Reavers we now see throughout this gameplay trailer include the white armored ones, and they all seem to have this specific logo on the chest plate that is the Trask Industries logo. So Bolivar Trask, in addition to building the Sentinels, is also the man and the company behind the Reavers of this story. And yes, we do know that they will be called the Reavers according to a PlayStation blog, and also in the Behind the Claws video released with this trailer, we do see animation of Wolverine with his arm around another one of these soldiers, and that guy's chest plate has very clearly the word Reaver on it. When he's stabbing this Reaver, Wolverine is in a part of Madripoor, the low town of Madripoor. You can see a variety of languages besides English on the signs, as Madripoor is a city where all walks of life from all over the globe end up settling in to engage in illegal and unethical trades. But specifically, there are three languages we see. These red characters on the right are Chinese, translating to import goods store. The triangular traffic sign where we see Barry Lualan is in the language of Malay, and it translates to give way or yield. Similarly, above, we see the market district sign. Beneath that is Kawasan Pasar, which is Malay for market area. So yeah, we're seeing a mix of English, Chinese, and Malay because Madripoor is located in Southeast Asia in the Indonesian archipelago, not far from Singapore. We also see Logan fighting Omega Red, one of two big X-Men villains that are confirmed in this trailer to appear in the game. Omega Red, Arkady Rosevich, is a Russian mutant who has these carbonadium coils in his wrists and the ability to drain the life force of others. He's also known for at times giving off a poisonous pheromone called death spores. I love how much bigger Omega Red looks than Wolverine here, and all the details of him super comic accurate. I mean, Wolverine should be shorter and stockier, at least compared to other known X-Men villains, even if he is comparatively tall to some of the Reavers he beats up here. Then as the trailer begins in proper, we hear Liam's voice as Wolverine.
Been fighting longer than I can remember.
Longer than I can remember is some intentional wording there because the developers confirmed that the Wolverine of this game is an unreliable narrator with gaps in his memory, and the adventures we'll be going through as him in this game is Wolverine trying to fill in those gaps in his memory. Then as Wolverine stabs through a Reaver in ways we're probably gonna have to hold back a bit from showing you, we do see that the Reaver still bleeds while electricity sizzles from his severed cybernetic parts, because while he is a cyborg, yeah, he does still have human tissue mixed in there that bleeds, and how much blood we're gonna get in this game is part of what makes all this footage look so cool. Actually, it looks like it was splitting open this Reaver that got Wolverine so soaked in blood, and I appreciate this detail that you can see some of that blood in his gums between his teeth. Based on what we're able to see from this footage, it looks like Wolverine's gonna have 3 different outfits and that they won't all necessarily regenerate as he goes, so that as you start to get torn up, just pieces of whatever he's wearing are gonna stay torn up and they're gonna stay bloodied up. So maybe by the end of an area, you can be completely drenched in blood and you'll stay that way. Wolverine steps into the Princess Bar of Madripoor. The Princess Bar is a known location from the Marvel Comics. It's in the Lowtown part of the city, and it was frequented by Wolverine specifically when he was under his Patch identity. Patch actually showed up for a cameo in 2024's Deadpool and Wolverine, and we never got confirmation that that casino was the Princess Bar, but I always thought that it was. Beneath the neon pink princess sign, the characters beneath that are Chinese letters that translate to the word bar, and as he walks inside, the bartender working the bar is wearing a green dress. Some are saying that this could end up being Viper. Now, when they first released these shots of the bar in 2021, there were already some Easter eggs that were visible there. A sign for Radio Lowtown 1048 FM on the left, a reference to 1048 being the numerical designation for the universe in which the Spider-Man PlayStation games take place, Earth 1048. The register reads 1974, and 1974 was the year of Wolverine's first full appearance in the comics, which brings us to this detail over on the right, a Quebec license plate reading HLK 181, and the Incredible Hulk 181 in 1974 was that comic in which Wolverine made his first full appearance. I like to make the shelves in my home into tiny little museums of fandom. I got one shelf for Marvel, one shelf for DC, one shelf for Spielberg, you get the idea. Every shelf has books and figurines and collectibles that I've meticulously collected and curated over the years, but my new favorite way to find my favorite things to display is Whatnot, hands down. Whatnot is a live stream shopping app where you can buy, sell, or auction literally anything. Last time we were browsing Whatnot, we saw a signed Rocket Raccoon Funko Pop, and we had had to have it. We're such fans of the Guardians movies, and especially after Volume 3, Rocket's one of our favorite miscreants. But then we remembered this one isn't for us. Whatnot sponsoring us to do a giveaway, so it's for you. All you have to do is enter to win, and it's super easy to do. To enter for a chance to win, just comment down below with your Whatnot username and tell us something on the platform you've had your eye on. Who knows, maybe it'll wind up being something we purchase for a future giveaway. If you don't have a Whatnot account ready, that's okay. We've got a QR code and a link you can use to sign up and get started. If you use our link to sign up, you'll get $20 off your first purchase, redeemable anywhere in the app. Then you can come back and comment with your username and be entered into the giveaway, or just find your new favorite on Whatnot. This is a limited time offer where new Rockstars viewers can get an extra $5 off their first purchase, so make sure to click and sign up today. In addition to Madripoor, this game is confirmed to take place in Canada and in Tokyo. We definitely see what looks like Canada here as this aircraft flies over the lake. Then we see Wolverine suited in his iconic yellow sleeveless suit, jumping from a shipping container. Now these containers on the right all read Trask Industries. That's a reference to Boulevard Trask, the inventor of the Sentinels. We did see Boulevard Trask briefly in X-Men 97 last year in an Oppenheimer state of guilt for inventing the spin-off form of the Sentinel technology that allowed Bastion to exist. Since this trailer ends with a big ol' Sentinel, you know Boulevard Trask is likely going to be one of those other X-Men characters the developers have been teasing will appear in this game. Wolverine lands on one Reaver, sinking his claws into him, and then rolls off of him to cut the leg off of another Reaver, then goes up through the chin, through the head of another, which was the killing move Logan did to this bald Reaver in the Kansas City hotel room during Charles Xavier's seizure in the 2017 Logan film. Then we see Wolverine on his motorcycle. He passes a road sign for Squamish. Squamish is a town in British Columbia in Canada near Vancouver and Whistler. The motorcycle's license plate reads 229R, and it was in Uncanny X-Men 229 in 1988. That was the first comic appearance of the Reavers, so I suppose the R, the license plate, is for Reaver. Some gameplay action of Wolverine in the Canadian section, leaping down on an armored soldier, and then in an alleyway, killing some Reavers. This alleyway might actually be Tokyo because we see a Japanese vending machine there, and Madripoor is further south from Japan. I don't think it has much Japanese stuff in it. Then in the daytime, in a marketplace in Madripoor, we see a sign reading Rimpa Lima Beradik, which is Malay for 5 sister spices, and I think this could be a reference to the Stepford Cuckoos, the psychically linked quintuplet mutants of Celeste Cuckoo, Esme Cuckoo, Irma Mindy Cuckoo, Phoebe Cuckoo, and Sophie Cuckoo. After the deaths of Esme and Sophie, they became known as the 3-in-1. It would be pretty funny if in all the carnage here, 2 of the 5 spices get destroyed, leaving only 3. Then we see Wolverine back in his yellow suit in an upscale area that I think might be Tokyo, or it could be the Hightown area of Madripoor, I'm not sure. But then right after this, we go back to Wolverine on a rooftop of Lowtown Madripoor, and just the traversing he's doing here looks so cool because you can see the full layout of the city. Like you can see the conceptual skyscrapers of Hightown, which in the city of Madripoor is where the wealthy elite oligarch crime bosses live and look down on all the scrappier tiers of criminals. And I just love the layers to the background, like the way all these pastel houses of Lowtown are stacked on top of each other, kind of like a lot of the houses of Rio de Janeiro are. Then the shot of Omega Red that I talked about at the top, followed by this close-up of Wolverine's knuckles as his adamantium blades struggle to come out. Then we see the skin on his cheek open to expose the adamantium layer on his cheekbone. Then some more gameplay action shots, including this shot of Wolverine on his motorcycle driving up a tree stump as a ramp and landing on this convoy of shipping containers. Maybe those Trask shipping containers filled with Sentinel parts because the armed guard that he lands on and throws off has a vest with Trask on the back of it. Then the second major X-Men cameo of this trailer, Mystique, Raven Darkholm, shapeshifting from a Reaver to her natural blue-skinned form with the gameplay trailer for Marvel's Wolverine, the new Insomniac game coming in 2026, finally! While new Rockstars might be better known for covering nerdy movies and TV, hey, if something's Marvel and if it looks this good and has a coin flip's chance to snicked into an adjacent Spider-Man IP, then you better believe we're gonna break down the Easter eggs of said thing. So I'm gonna go through this Wolverine gameplay trailer frame by frame for everything you might have missed, because there are quite a few Easter eggs in this. And if you love Marvel anything, I'm wearing the shirt Tom Holland happened to be wearing in set videos for Spider-Man Brand New Day, a shirt for Delmar's Deli, the place with the best bodega cat in the MCU. And if you want to grab one of these shirts over at nerdriot.shop from our exclusive merch store, it's really the best way you can support what we're doing here at New Rockstars. Okay, Insomniac first announced Marvel's Wolverine in the PlayStation Showcase event in September 2021 with a bit of teaser footage that showed us Wolverine from behind and a close-up of his knuckles when he was sitting at the bar called the Princess Bar of Madripoor that we see the outside of in this new trailer. At the time, the developers of Marvel Marvel's Wolverine suggested that the standalone game shares continuity with the Insomniac Marvel Spider-Man games, but we don't know for sure how connected it will be to those storylines. The game has been delayed for so long that some fans begin to lose hope, but then this week on September 24th at State of Play, Sony announced that it would release on PS5 in fall 2026. Liam McIntyre is playing James Logan Howlett, aka Wolverine, in this game, making him the second Australian to play the Canadian mutant superhero. The gameplay trailer opens with a bit of a teaser to the rest of the footage, including a close-up of Wolverine's blood-stained face as he growls, and I love how you can make out all the tiny indentations in the pores of his face. Next, we see Logan in a different outfit, stabbing his claws up through this cybernetically enhanced dude. This is a Reaver. The Reavers are the cybernetic enforcers from throughout the X-Men comics, and technically the group of mercenaries led by Boyd Holbrook's Donald Pierce in the 2017 Logan film. Yeah, those were Reavers. The Reavers we now see throughout this gameplay trailer include the white armored ones, and they all seem to have this specific logo on the chest plate that is the Trask Industries logo. So Bolivar Trask, in addition to building the Sentinels, is also the man and the company behind the Reavers of this story. And yes, we do know that they will be called the Reavers according to a PlayStation blog, and also in the Behind the Claws video released with this trailer, we do see animation of Wolverine with his arm around another one of these soldiers, and that guy's chest plate has very clearly the word Reaver on it. When he's stabbing this Reaver, Wolverine is in a part of Madripoor, the low town of Madripoor. You can see a variety of languages besides English on the signs, as Madripoor is a city where all walks of life from all over the globe end up settling in to engage in illegal and unethical trades. But specifically, there are 3 languages we see. These red characters on the right are Chinese, translating to import goods store. The triangular traffic sign where we see Barry Lualan is in the language of Malay, and it translates to give way or yield. Similarly, above, we see the market district sign. Beneath that is Kawasan Pasar, which is Malay for market area. So yeah, we're seeing a mix of English, Chinese, and Malay because Madripoor is located in Southeast Asia in the Indonesian archipelago, not far from Singapore. We also see Logan fighting Omega Red, one of 2 big X-Men villains that are confirmed in this trailer to appear in the game. Omega Red, Arkady Rosevich, is a Russian mutant who has these carbonadium coils in his wrists and the ability to drain the life force of others. He's also known for at times giving off a poisonous pheromone called death spores. I love how much bigger Omega Red looks than Wolverine here, and all the details of him super comic accurate. I mean, Wolverine should be shorter and stockier, at least compared to other known X-Men villains, even if he is comparatively tall to some of the Reavers he beats up here. Then as the trailer begins in proper, we hear Liam's voice as Wolverine.
Been fighting longer than I can remember.
Longer than I can remember is some intentional wording there because the developers confirmed that the Wolverine of this game is an unreliable narrator with gaps in his memory, and the adventures we'll be going through as him in this game is Wolverine trying to fill in those gaps in his memory. Then as Wolverine stabs through a Reaver in ways we're probably gonna have to hold back a bit from showing you, we do see that the Reaver still bleeds while electricity sizzles from his severed cybernetic parts, because while he is a cyborg, yeah, he does still have human tissue mixed in there that bleeds, and how much blood we're gonna get in this game is part of what makes all this footage look so cool. Actually, it looks like it was splitting open this Reaver that got Wolverine so soaked in blood, and I appreciate this detail that you can see some of that blood in his gums between his teeth. Based on what we're able to see from this footage, it looks like Wolverine's gonna have 3 different outfits and that they won't all necessarily regenerate as he goes, so that as you start to get torn up, just pieces of whatever he's wearing are gonna stay torn up and they're gonna stay bloodied up. So maybe by the end of an area, you can be completely drenched in blood and you'll stay that way. Wolverine steps into the Princess Bar of Madripoor. The Princess Bar is a known location from the Marvel Comics. It's in the Lowtown part of the city, and it was frequented by Wolverine specifically when he was under his Patch identity. Patch actually showed up for a cameo in 2024's Deadpool and Wolverine, and we never got confirmation that that casino was the Princess Bar, but I always thought that it was. Beneath the neon pink princess sign, the characters beneath that are Chinese letters that translate to the word bar, and as he walks inside, the bartender working the bar is wearing a green dress. Some are saying that this could end up being Viper. Now, when they first released these shots of the bar in 2021, there were already some Easter eggs that were visible there. A sign for Radio Lowtown 1048 FM on the left, a reference to 1048 being the numerical designation for the universe in which the Spider-Man PlayStation games take place, Earth 1048. The register reads 1974, and 1974 was the year of Wolverine's first full appearance in the comics, which brings us to this detail over on the right, a Quebec license plate reading HLK 181, and the Incredible Hulk 181 in 1974 was that comic. And which Wolverine made his first full appearance. I like to make the shelves in my home into tiny little museums of fandom. I got one shelf for Marvel, one shelf for DC, one shelf for Spielberg, you get the idea. Every shelf has books and figurines and collectibles that I've meticulously collected and curated over the years, but my new favorite way to find my favorite things to display is Whatnot, hands down. Whatnot is a live stream shopping app where you can buy, sell, or auction literally anything. Last time we were browsing Whatnot, we saw a signed Rocket Raccoon Funko Pop, and we had to have it. We're such fans of the Guardians movies, and especially after Volume 3, Rocket's one of our favorite miscreants. But then we remembered this one isn't for us. Whatnot's sponsoring us to do a giveaway, so it's for you. All you have to do is enter to win, and it's super easy to do. To enter for a chance to win, just comment down below with your Whatnot username and tell us something on the platform you've had your eye on. Who knows, maybe it'll wind up being something we purchase for a future giveaway. If you don't have a Whatnot account already, that's okay. We've got a QR code and a link you can use to sign up and get started. If you use our link to sign up, you'll get $20 off your first purchase, redeemable anywhere in the app. Then you can come back and comment with your username and be entered into the giveaway, or just find your new favorite on Whatnot. This is a limited time offer where new Rockstars viewers can get an extra $5 off their first purchase, so make sure to click and sign up today. In addition to Madripoor, this game is confirmed to take place in Canada and in Tokyo. We definitely see what looks like Canada here as this aircraft flies over the lake. Then we see Wolverine suited in his iconic yellow sleeveless suit, jumping from a shipping container. Now these containers on the right all read Trask Industries. That's a reference to Bolivar Trask, the inventor of the Sentinels. We did see Bolivar Trask briefly in X-Men 97 last year in an Oppenheimer state of guilt for inventing the spin-off form of the Sentinel technology that allowed Bastion to exist. Since this trailer ends with a big ol' Sentinel, you know Bolivar Trask is likely gonna be one of those other X-Men characters the developers have been teasing will appear in this game. Wolverine lands on one Reaver, sinking his claws into him, and then rolls off of him to cut the leg off of another Reaver, then goes up through the chin, through the head of another, which was the killing move Logan did to this bald Reaver in the Kansas City hotel room during Charles Xavier's seizure in the 2017 Logan film. Then we see Wolverine on his motorcycle. He passes a road sign for Squamish. Squamish is a town in British Columbia in Canada near Vancouver and Whistler. The motorcycle's license plate reads 229R, and it was in Uncanny X-Men 229 in 1988. That was the first comic appearance of the Reavers, so I suppose the R, the license plate, is for Reaver. Some gameplay action of Wolverine in the Canadian section, leaping down on an armored soldier, and then in an alleyway, killing some Reavers. This alleyway might actually be Tokyo because we see a Japanese vending machine there, and Madripoor is further south from Japan. I don't think it has much Japanese stuff in it. Then in the daytime, in a marketplace in Madripoor, we see a sign reading Rempa Lima Beradik, which is Malay for 5 sister spices, and I think this could be a reference to the Stepford Cuckoos, the psychically linked quintuplet mutants of Celeste Cuckoo, Esme Cuckoo, Irma Mindy Cuckoo, Phoebe Cuckoo, and Sophie Cuckoo. After the deaths of Esme and Sophie, they became known as the 3-in-1. It would be pretty funny if in all the carnage here, 2 of the 5 spices get destroyed, leaving only 3. Then we see Wolverine back in his yellow suit in an upscale area that I think might be Tokyo, or it could be the Hightown area of Madripoor, I'm not sure. But then right after this, we go back to Wolverine on a rooftop of Lowtown Madripoor, and just the traversing he's doing here looks so cool because you can see the full layout of the city. Like you can see the conceptual skyscrapers of Hightown, which in the city of Madripoor is where the wealthy elite oligarch crime bosses live and look down on all the scrappier tiers of criminals. And I just love the layers to the background, like the way all these pastel houses of Lowtown are stacked on top of each other, kind of like a lot of the houses of Rio de Janeiro are. Then the shot of Omega Red that I talked about at the top, followed by this close-up of Wolverine's knuckles as his adamantium blades struggle to come out. Then we see the skin on his cheek open to expose the adamantium layer on his cheekbone. Then some more gameplay action shots, including this shot of Wolverine on his motorcycle driving up a tree stump as a ramp and landing on this convoy of shipping containers. Maybe those Trask shipping containers filled with Sentinel parts because the armed guard that he lands on and throws off has a vest with Trask on the back of it. Then the second major X-Men cameo of this trailer, Mystique, Raven Darkholm, shapeshifting from a Reaver to her natural blue-skinned form with the red hair. She's fighting Reavers here, so maybe Mystique is a playable character. The description from the PlayStation blog did confirm that, quote, some will fight alongside Logan against all odds. Another section that may be in Tokyo, Wolverine in his yellow suit swinging from a cable as part of a building is collapsing. He's clawing down the side of it, definitely passing a chunk of that building that reads Trask, along with that triangular logo that's been on all the Reavers. Then on the title reveal, Wolverine gives a good snikt of his claws, and I love how the light glimmers off the center claw in a kind of lens flare because it reminds me of the lens flare off of Wolverine's claws in the intro of the 90s X-Men animated series. The designers were also just great about having just the right amount of body hair on his shoulders, because when Wolverine is sleeveless like this, there needs to be some wild animal fur on those arms. The last shot shows us what all those Trask Easter eggs were about: a sentinel smashing out of a building and lifting its head up, preparing to unleash hell on Wolverine. This looks like it's the same building that Wolverine was sliding down when he passed that Trask sign. The game developers have said we're gonna get another look at this game in spring 2026. So I wanna know, who do you think will be some other Marvel characters who could cameo in this? Like, if Hulk 181 is referenced in the game, could we get a fight similar to that moment in Deadpool and Wolverine, where the John Byrne design of Wolverine fights Hulk in the woods? Hopefully, Hulk could show up in these snowy Canadian trees. Will we get some other X-Men or mutant characters like Jean Grey or Silver Samurai if we're gonna be in Japan? Or could the story of this game connect to the continuity of the recent Spider-Man games? Yes, I know there were some leaks that told some people some info about this game out there. I'm not gonna go into them in this video, but you're welcome to go look at them yourself if you want. Comment down below with your thoughts, and a special thanks to one of our YouTube members, Rick Denman, for supporting us at the executive producer level. Hey, we have a new channel called The Witching Hour, which is launching October 1st, and it's gonna be weekly horror film video essays. Subscribe to that channel. I think you'll really like what we're doing over there. You can follow me at
Dude, let's talk about it. Yes, sirs. I'm excited for the damn game coming out. Motherfuckers, it's about damn time. It's high time, damn it, if y'all coming out with with a new Wolverine video game. You damn right. You sons of bitches. Y'all see that shit, the graphics and all that? Yeah, I mean, and with what they came out over the past 5-10 years, which has been, as we could say, probably longer than that, since they came out with the first Wolverine video game, in these newer gen video games now, these newer systems. Because I believe there was like an old Wolverine game back then, way back then. Um, so, because this one, I mean, I see graphics, yeah, that's similar to the Spider-Man game that came out. That has a Miles Morales in there, but also more predominantly, I see graphics or gameplay style and design that's similar, very keenly similar to the new God of War trilogy, right? With the whole zoom up, like be right up to your face kind of action. You know, they display that somewhat in Wolverine Origins. You know, so I'm thinking like, was they the first ones that produced that kind of style of gaming, which is where God of War trilogy got some of their gameplay, their fighting gameplay from. Because, dude, like, it was the same shit. The way he was moving and shit, you know what I mean? Hey, that's classic Wolverine. But they ain't really show any kind of like combos and shit like that. You know, those fast ass combos he was doing, man, with his claws on Wolverine Origins, man. Like, for y'all to bring my boy back, man, in these new gen consoles and shit. Yeah, y'all gotta give him that. Like, I want to see like some of the same shit that they showed in Origins with that gameplay. Like, I want to see speed and all that shit. Like, I want you to be moving faster. You know, they make it similar to the gameplay, to the rush up to your face fighting gameplay. Okay, but damn it, oh, they made God of War in that. But damn it, yeah, I want you to be faster. He gets to be moving faster, y'all, than Kratos, because it's fucking Wolverine. I'm not fucking playing. And it needs to be as that, in that order. Don't be having moving like them at the same speed and shit as other hack and slashing games and shit I've seen and played. Yeah, because I'm going to get pissed. It's going to make a motherfucker go back and play Wolverine Origins. But motherfuckers going to play it in its completion as a gamer does. Hey, man. Yeah, as a true gamer does. So therefore, yeah, because for one, uh, can't wait to see them show Bolivar Trask and these Sentinels, damn it, they were showing in there. I'm like, oh shit, okay. And shit, Omega Red, they got him looking vicious. So yeah, man. I don't know, it's gonna be awesome too. Yeah, and him mentioning too, yeah, since they're gonna be in these locations or other characters are gonna pop up. So yeah, I'm hoping for that too. You know, that'll be awesome to see. Yeah, Omega Red, not Omega Red, but Samurai, and they're gonna be showing. I think yeah, he said Mystique is gonna be in there too. Oh yeah, yeah, this is gonna be something else. But yeah, so hopefully you guys can still hear me. Hopefully my sound is still good and everything. So yeah, here we go. We're gonna go into the next segment of the geek news here in the Geekverse over here in the Hanma Force. So yeah, here we go. Check this out. And this is these are from Marvelous Videos, Marvelous Anime. Shout out to them and fair use. So these are ones that I haven't seen except for one of them. But yeah, but let's dive in, and check it out. Like I said, y'all may have an interest in this too as well. And I downloaded these also because, damn it, I'm curious. I'm curious. I got highly curious when I seen this. I'm like, oh shit, how the fuck I missed this notification? This came out a month ago? You some bitch. Damn it, YouTube. With y'all funny asses, damn it, with y'all funny ass ways of making sure people get their damn notifications. Man, come on. So yeah. But let's check this out because I'm like, oh man, this is automatic. I gotta share this with you, brothers. So yeah, let's go. Hanma Force.
Hello there, folks. You're just in time for yet another marvelous anime video. We're a little spoiled for choice when it comes to sci-fi anime featuring cyberpunk elements from Akira to Appleseed. In some ways, we can argue that anime surpasses even live-action films as the ideal medium for this genre due to the considerable creative freedom it offers its creators. Over the years, advancements in visual arts and animation techniques has made this increasingly true. There's just something about imagining our future that fascinates us as a species, and these manga and anime give wings to our flights of fancy. With the current boom in AI, augmented reality, and the increasing amount of our lives that are floating around on the web, what seemed confined to the scenes of sci-fi films or anime is now very much our reality. Out of all the anime in this genre, Ghost in the Shell was truly well ahead of its time, as it spoke about this stuff a long time before it came to fruition. It also paved the way for some of the biggest sci-fi anime to have ever been released and is revered by fans and creators to this day. Originally a manga by Masamune Shirao, it was developed into a film with legendary director Mamoru Oshii at the helm, and the rest, as they say, was history. Shirao's vision, in combination with Oshii's directorial sensibilities, would give birth to one of the most enduring and iconic works in the sci-fi genre, which went beyond just fast-flowing action sequences. The film posed thought-provoking questions regarding the nature of human beings, the identity crisis suffered by people in a world where the boundaries between the digital and the real were becoming increasingly blurred, and much more. In today's video, we're going to provide a detailed breakdown of everything that makes Ghost in the Shell such a juggernaut of this medium, from its genesis in Masamune Shirau's genius brain to the controversies surrounding its live-action adaptation, and its connection to Scarlett Johansson will leave no stone unturned. So plug in as we dive into this far-flung future where flesh meets code. Let's begin. The Genesis and Creative Vision, Masamune Shirau's manga. First published in Kodansha's young magazine Zokan Kaizokuban from April 1989 to November 1990, the series was compiled into a single volume in 1991. This legendary manga by Masamune Shirau is not only visually spectacular, but also ahead of its time, providing commentary on social issues, technological evolution, and pondering the nature of consciousness and identity. It achieves this through its vivid exploration of an ever-evolving digital world, which comprises cybernetic prosthetics and the psychological impact of a world where the lines between reality and cyberspace are increasingly blurred. Before the manga made its way into the pages of Kodansha's magazine, its creative vision and genesis lay in the author's curious explorations of the technological advancements in his own contemporary world and the philosophical questions he had in his mind at the time. One of his key conceptual inspirations came from a game called Game of Life by John Conway, which dealt with the simulation of cellular automata to induce evolution in them. He saw a digital metaphor in this and was fascinated by how complex behaviors could emerge from simple rules, a core idea that he carried into the Ghost in the Shell manga. Shirau saw instant parallels between the cellular automata and things like human society, technology, and even consciousness with regards to how these things were in a state of constant evolution without a clear, singular, and central point of control. From these things sprang the themes that navigated around networked intelligence and self-organizing systems, all of which underpin the manga's plot and world building. In an official interview, Masamune Shirau himself once said that his story wasn't about drama or emotions, but about logic and how systems evolve. The second thing that greatly influenced the genesis of Ghost in the Shell was his fascination with concepts such as consciousness, identity, and the soul. His thoughts regarding these concepts were influenced by the shape the digital world was taking in Japan during the 1980s. His questions ranged from the fate of consciousness when attached to a network to whether machines could develop souls if they were connected to enough data. These questions are directly reflected in the series' protagonist, Major Kusanagi's own central conflict regarding her existential journey as a cyborg seeking meaning in her identity. He was also further influenced by the emerging cyberpunk movement, especially through authors like William Gibson, who's largely credited for coining the term cyberpunk in his 1984 novel, The Neuromancer. Along with Gibson, Shirau was also influenced by the works of Philip K. Dick, whose stories centered on the boundaries between reality and simulation. However, Shirau went a step further by creating an amalgamation of Western cyberpunk ideas with traditional Japanese Buddhist and Shinto beliefs, which hold that even non-living things have souls. The myths of his home country are also rife with tales of spirits and beings that can shift their identities, offering fertile ground for a reinterpretation of these concepts in a sci-fi setting. Not many people know that Masamune Shirau also had a background in mechanical drawing and fine arts, which is reflected in the obsessively detailed nature of each panel in the manga. He filled pages of the manga with technical annotations, diagrams, and side notes about fictional technology in his creations. He was very passionate about firearms, computer hardware, and robotics, all of which are very apparent the moment you dive into Ghost in the Shell. Finally, having grown up in post-war Japan, an era of technological boom, he was influenced by the society around him. Japan's meteoric rise from the ashes of war with the widespread use of automation sparked both fear and hope regarding how society was being reshaped by technology. In this way, he used his manga to comment on the government's overreach regarding issues like data control, surveillance, and corporate military alliances, decades before these concerns became mainstream. This made his work way ahead of its time. International co-production, manga entertainment's role and overseas appeal. Ghost in the Shell was one of the earliest examples of anime being financed and produced via international collaboration. Bandai Namco and Kodansha were joined by the UK-based distributor Manga Entertainment as the third producer, having contributed to the film's budget. This was a strategic push into Western markets because by doing this, Manga Entertainment had secured for itself the exclusive early distribution rights to the anime outside of Japan. This resulted resulted in a limited theatrical release in the UK, along with flooding the Western home video market, paving the way for the series to garner mass appeal among fans. This was reflected when the film topped the Billboard Top Video Sales chart in the summer of 1996, outperforming some classic Hollywood offerings, including Jumanji and Pulp Fiction in the process. The co-production also enabled the adoption of some new tech, like digitally generated animation and digital cell integration, along with visual techniques like lens effect filters to craft an experience that resonated with the global audience. The film's marketing strategy leaned heavily not on its action, but more on its intellectual themes, ambient visuals, and philosophical depth. This made it something unique and outside the mainstream. It also attracted a niche audience that appreciated its thoughtful pacing. This helped the film develop a cult following, something that was sadly not reflected back home despite being critically well received. This anime was critical to the medium's global future because its co-production effectively demonstrated how anime could be produced with foreign investors rather than merely licensing the product afterwards. In fact, this would set the groundwork for the modern production committee model, where multiple stakeholders, both domestic and international, share production risks and benefits. In the end, this rare East-West collaboration not only benefited the series in the short term, but also had a lasting impact on the entire industry, particularly in terms of investments and innovation in digital animation techniques, which ultimately benefited the industry in the long run. Visual identity and sound, animation, CGI, and Kenji Kawai's score. We briefly touched on how Ghost in the Shell pioneered new innovations in digital animation techniques, but let's explore that in a bit more in-depth way. This film was one of the first to merge hand-drawn cell animation with computer graphics to create digitally optimized cells to craft lush and layered visuals. Cinematic depth, the likes of which had never been seen before in animated films, was achieved through the use of lens filters, which subtly blurred the foreground and sharpened distant visuals, thereby enhancing immersion in critical scenes. Generally, most critics and fans cite the thermo-optical camouflage sequence as a prime example of where this technique was employed. In this scene, a single illustration was digitally manipulated to create a distortion in the surrounding background, which created the illusion of a seamless and visually striking cloaking effect. Combining this with the animation team's meticulous research on elements like firearms, and the result was a final product steeped in realism, from the sparks created by metal clashing to nuanced physical movements. The film's rich, ultra-atmospheric cityscapes, drawn from chaotic neon-infused Hong Kong-like environments, helped create a cyberpunk aesthetic later echoed in titles like Blade Runner, Westworld, and Cyberpunk 2077. Adding to these groundbreaking animation techniques was an equally stellar soundtrack created by Kenji Kawai. His technique marries traditional Japanese music with electronic and Eastern European folk music elements to create something that's dripping with atmosphere. The iconic opening theme, Making of a Cyborg, blends ancient Japanese choral arrangements with harmonies that seem to be taken from Bulgarian folk songs, achieving the perfect blend of the archaic and the futuristic, perfectly representing the vibes of the film. All of these elements result in Ghost in the Shell being visually rich, with a living city filled with dense details, dripping rain, rugged textures, and atmospheric lightning amidst neon-lit cityscapes that feel both familiar and otherworldly. Franchise expansion, sequels, spin-offs, and narrative repetition. Following the success of the original 1995 film, a series of sequels and spin-offs emerged over the course of the next several years, transforming Ghost in the Shell into a massive franchise. The 1995 film would be followed up by a sequel titled Ghost in the Shell: Innocence in 2004. It continues the legacy of the original by exploring similar psychological themes set against a sci-fi backdrop with a wealth of visual poetry. When asked about the thought process behind making this film, Mamoru Oshii, the director of the movie, stated that Innocence wasn't simply a sequel. He said that, for him, it was a technical challenge and a philosophical meditation on life, absence, and identity. Around the same time as the sequel, a standalone TV series titled Standalone Complex was created. While featuring the same characters and world, it deviates significantly from the original titles in terms of pacing and mood. Standalone Complex is more action-heavy, moving away from its philosophical and meditative roots a bit. This isn't to say that it's not an enjoyable watch. In fact, the series can be credited with bringing in a lot of younger audiences who probably wouldn't have enjoyed the tone and pacing of the original films. This series is spread over 50 episodes spanning across 2 seasons. It also spawned a follow-up film called Solid State Society in 2006. This would be followed by a 4-hour-long OVA exploring the pre-Section 9 origins of the main group of the TV series continuity. There's a lot of revisiting and redesigning of core elements and character dynamics. dynamics. Arise, alternative architecture would follow, which was basically a repackaging of the OVAs with 2 new episodes for television. After experiencing a lull of almost 5 years with no new content, Netflix revived the series with SAC 2045, a 3D film featuring CGI that continued the standalone complex timeline for 2 seasons, each comprising 12 episodes from 2020 to 2022. These events would be compiled into 2 films, Sustainable War in 2021 and The Last Human in 2023. A new reboot of the franchise is set to be released by Science Saru in 2026 and would technically be the 10th adaptation of this iconic series. Whatever iteration of the series you might watch, certain narratives are repeated without exception. Its core philosophical dilemmas, which involve identity, consciousness, and the meaning of being human, remain the same across different continuities. However, with each new iteration, there's a minor shift in perspective. For instance, Standalone Complex employs serialized storytelling to explore organizational ethos, while Arise retreats to original stories dealing with themes such as identity and loyalty in formation. In contrast, SAC 2045 provides a commentary on more contemporary takes, including cyber threat anxieties, presented through modern animation techniques like CGI. The reason the series continues to be popular despite the recurrence of certain narratives is that fans find familiarity and comfort in the core motifs, no matter how much the presentation and elements like pacing might vary. However, the fans' reception over the years has been varied, with some praising the spin-offs while others view them as underwhelming in comparison to the originals. Philosophical identity, human consciousness, memory, and cybernetics. While Ghost in the Shell explores the concept of philosophical identity through human consciousness, memory, and cybernetics throughout the series, it's through the character of Major Kusanagi that this idea is explored the most. She's the quintessential cybernetic being, a human brain and consciousness, or ghost, housed in a fully synthetic body, or shell. Her inner conflict regarding her humanity acts as the franchise's recurring philosophical thread across manga, films, and TV adaptations. The Major often questions the authenticity of her memories, as she's no longer able to decipher whether they are genuine or fabricated by the ones who gave her this body. Despite possessing a seemingly human consciousness, her almost fully mechanized body poses several existential questions. This makes her an entirely new archetype as someone who lies on the cusp of humanity and machines. The series treats memories as something fragile and hackable rather than a reliable foundation of self, which further complicates matters regarding its authenticity. What Ghost in the Shell does is present society itself as one vast information network where truth and identity are mutable. The series plays with this idea further through the metaphors of Ghost in the Shell, which we briefly touched on earlier. We spoke about how Shirao was greatly influenced by Japanese Shinto beliefs, which state that even inorganic and non-living things have souls. The ghost symbolizes the soul or consciousness, which can only be described as an immaterial essence. If not lost in the digital space, it continues to try to define itself in a world where its body is replaceable and death in the traditional sense isn't the final frontier. The shell, which is the body, is equally complex as it's an object that's both empowering, as it can be customized and made stronger, while at the same time alienating, as it's something that can easily be replaced, as it's not truly part of the self. The ghost and the shell are not interconnected in the same way that the body and soul of a normal human being are. Together, these metaphors frame a key question regarding the fate of the soul when this connection is missing with the body. With how far technology has come, it raises an even bigger question regarding whether this connection is even necessary any longer. Western adaptation controversies, the 2017 live-action film, and casting debate. The storied franchise would receive a much-anticipated live-action adaptation in 2017, with actress Scarlett Johansson set to play the role of the Major. The moment news of this broke out, there was a massive outcry from certain sections who accused the filmmakers of whitewashing the character by not using an Asian actress for the role. In fact, petitions were started that garnered over 100,000 signatures. While these things highlighted the frustration of people with Hollywood's treatment of Asian roles and representation, the casting choice received a muted response from the Japanese themselves. They shrugged it off as a typical Hollywood thing and even praised Johansson's alignment with the whole cyberpunk mythos. Those who disagreed with her choice merely voiced a resigned tolerance, acknowledging that Western films often require a white star for global reach. The strongest support in her favor, however, would come from the people behind Ghost in the Shell itself, and we're not just talking about the ones making the film. Mamoru Oshii, the original anime director, would state that the Major was a cyborg, meaning her entire form was an assumed one, due to which there was no basis for saying that an Asian actress had to portray her. He also heaped praise on Johansson's portrayal, stating that she had gone above and beyond his expectations for the role. His sentiments were echoed by Kodansha, the actual rights holders to the property, who, in their official statement, said that they had never imagined it to be a Japanese actress in the first place, and Johansson's casting gave this film a chance for Japanese property to resonate with global audiences. The director and producers of the live-action films also stated that the movie was meant for a global audience, as it was intended to be an international story, and they needed a figurehead movie star to spearhead the project. Scarlett Johansson herself addressed the criticism, stating that she took the role with immense seriousness as she understood the gravity of the role she was playing and the franchise she was representing. She also emphasized the need for diversity in Hollywood and stated that she would never presume to play the role of a person from another race. This final statement, however, leads us to another controversy, as reports surfaced that visual effects tests were conducted to make actors appear more East Asian. As expected, when that news broke, it fueled a new wave of anger and outrage. However, Paramount Pictures was quick to deny the allegations, stating Johansson was never involved in any such tests, claiming they were limited to a background actor before being scrapped. However, beyond the controversy and the support surrounding the project, many critics and fans felt the live-action film really missed the mark in terms of delivering the franchise's philosophical and existential potency. Many accused it of veering into the same trap that most live-action adaptations fall into by adhering to Hollywood-style plot structure and reducing Major's journey to mundane, done-and-dusted tropes that can often be found in other films as well. There were also those who blamed the controversies surrounding the film for its underwhelming performance at the box office, stating that these things alienated the fans. Regardless, there have been talks of a sequel circulating, and one can only hope that they deliver a much better product that resonates with most fans if they decide to take a second bite of the cherry. Enduring legacy, influence on global sci-fi and anime fandom. Ghost in the Shell has long outgrown its medium and is more than just a sci-fi anime and manga from the 90s. It's etched out an enduring legacy not just in the anime fandom, but also in the global sci-fi scene. We've already mentioned how the Wachowskis were deeply influenced by it for the creation of The Matrix. In fact, it's said that they produced a copy of Ghost in the Shell during their pitch to their producers and stated that they wanted to replicate that in live action. The parallels are plain to see if you're familiar with both products. The green code, data ports, and the existential confusion between the real and virtual worlds are elements that fans will recognize as influences from the anime. Even the scenes in which Neo awakens to his powers by jumping off a building kind of mirrors the Major's iconic plunge into the city at the film's start. James Cameron, whose film Avatar would explore consciousness transfer and synthetic bodies years later, also praised the franchise, stating that it was a stunning work of speculative fiction, adding that Ghost in the Shell was the first truly adult animation film to reach a level of literacy and visual excellence. Even Steven Spielberg couldn't escape the magic of the series, as he was so intrigued by it that he played a major role in securing the rights for the live-action film in 2017. Beyond Hollywood, its impact reverberates even in the gaming world, where it's influenced and shaped countless hits, including Deus Ex, Metal Gear Solid, Cyberpunk 2077, and even Half-Life. In its own medium, some of the most cult and critically acclaimed works owe their existence to Ghost in the Shell, which gave them the blueprint to succeed. Its existence can be easily seen in shows like Techno Lies, Ergo Proxy, Psychopaths, and Serial Experiments Lane. We have covered all of these shows multiple times on our channel, so if you want to know more about them, head over there after we're done here. Thanks to the marketing strategy employed by Manga Entertainment, Ghost in the Shell reached cult status with fans and critics alike. By the 2000s, it was being studied within both anime and film circles as a serious work of cinema and art. Such was its stature that it was mentioned alongside some greats of the genre, including 2001, A Space Odyssey, Blade Runner, and Akira. You couldn't go through forums and discussions regarding anime recommendations and not stumble upon multiple threads referencing it. One of the things that would truly warm Masamune Shirau's heart is the fact that the series is cited by designers as an influence on the fashion and robotics scene as well. Even architects have stated that the series provided a blueprint for possible future cityscapes. The series' legacy is also reflected in the numerous awards it's won along the way. While not a trophy, it does hold the distinction of being rated at 95% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 76 on Metacritic, something that's rare for anime films, especially ones that don't pander to mainstream sensibilities. The series was nominated for 5 Annie Awards in 1996, including Best Animated Feature and Directing, which was an unprecedented recognition for a Japanese production at the time. To this day, it's rated as one of the best anime films to have ever been released, and what makes this all the more impressive is that it retains this status despite massive advancements in visual effects and animation techniques since its creation. I think we can safely say, considering all these things, that Ghost in the Shell is a timeless piece of art whose legacy will endure for generations to come. Marvelous verdict! Despite being released more than 3 decades ago, Ghost in the Shell is anything but a relic as it continues to shape how creators think about consciousness, identity, and the soul in the age of AI. It also continues to draw new fans in as the story and its themes are timeless, resonating with people across time and space. With how AI has grown in recent years, along with things like Cyberlink by Elon Musk and the numerous AI applications, the questions that this franchise asked years ago have become relevant real-world dilemmas now. Ghost in the Shell will forever remain relevant to us and become increasingly so as humanity continues to advance and move into the future. In this way, its legacy is forever cemented as one of the greatest anime to have ever come out. We hope you enjoyed watching this video as much as we had fun making it for you. If you liked what you just saw, be sure to check out the rest of our channel where we post regular videos about all of your favorite mangas and animes. Thanks for sticking with us right to the end of this video. For now though, it's time for us to plug out and say goodbye. As always, if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Otherwise, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.
Okay, I'm back now. Yeah, it kind of acts a little stally and shit, man. You know, there's little hiccups with this app and shit, with this uh, with Rumble Studios. But hey, nothing for me to continue to bitch about and complain. Shit, hey, I'm grateful. Shit, salute. But yeah, so I got another one I want to show y'all just to show y'all, hey, that I'm not bullshitting about this team, Marvel's Anime. So yeah, I got a couple more videos from them. So check this out, and yeah, we'll be doing our late night anime, anime late night. So yeah, we'll be doing that like after these videos. So yeah, we won't be so we won't be up here like that long. So yeah, check this out.
Hey there folks, and welcome back to another episode of Marvelous Anime. Today we're delving into the vast universe of Hajime no Ippo, a series that has withstood the test of time due to its violent boxing matches, emotional character development, and the never-give-up spirit of willpower that has driven its fans over the decades. Yet, as iconic as the manga and anime are, The ride hasn't been smooth sailing. There have been hiatuses, curiosity about the future, and intense discussions in the fan community. Get ready, because we're about to dive into the fan feelings, theories, and the big question: what's in store for Ippo? Before we get into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to the channel. It's a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The long manga run and publication status. Hajime no Ippo began serialization in Weekly Shonen Magazine on October 11, 1989. George Morikawa, then a young manga artist, built the story around Ippo Makonuchi, a shy teenager who discovers boxing after being rescued from bullies by professional fighter Mamoru Takamura. What starts as a way to build confidence slowly grows into a career as Ippo trains, learns, and steps into the ring as a professional. What made the series so appealing wasn't only the dramatic fights, but also the attention to real boxing strategy, as well as the maturation of its cast. Every battle was technically detailed, displaying the equilibrium of stamina, power, and mental vigilance, which gave the story a realistic aspect. The manga quickly established itself as one of the most consistent titles in Kodansha's lineup. The first collected volume appeared in February 1990, and as the years passed, it became clear that Hajime no Ippo was built for the long haul. By December 2012, it reached its 1000th chapter, a milestone only a handful of manga series have ever achieved. That accomplishment placed it in the company of titles like Detective Conan and One Piece as one of the longest-running series in Japanese publishing history. As of August 2025, the manga comprises 144 volumes with over 1,400 chapters and continues to be serialized. For decades, the only way to read the series was through its physical volumes in Japan. That finally changed in June 2021 when Kodansha announced that Hajime no Ippo would receive a digital release for the first time in its 33-year history. It was introduced in July of the same year through a digital rollout, which introduced a new generation of readers to the story in a new format. In September 2023, the series was released to English-speaking audiences through Kodansha's K-Manga service. The initial 10 volumes were published online, and new chapters have been posted weekly, ensuring that overseas fans can now follow Ippo's journey legally and consistently. The story itself has changed over the years. Although the first arcs were dedicated to Ippo's rise in the Japanese featherweight division, the series has taken a different turn in recent times. Ippo, after years of hard matches and punishments, comes to the hardest choice to end his career. Rather than pursuing his own titles, he begins to train young fighters and take his place in the corner. This shift of focus has caused controversy among many readers, as some would prefer to see a full rebound of Ippo. Nevertheless, the new angle symbolizes the natural flow of time and how fighters usually transform themselves into instructors after being rivals. Despite these occurrences, Morikawa has not officially closed the series, so the continuation of the series remains open-ended. The anime version of Hajime no Ippo increased its reach. The initial series aired on TV between October 2000 and March 2002, comprising 75 episodes. It was produced by Madhouse and adapted the early career of Ippo with a stunning sense of detail and fluid animation, and was acclaimed as one of the best sports animes of the time. A special 76th episode was released on DVD, followed in 2003 by the Champion Road television film and the OVA, Mashiba vs. Kimura, both of which highlighted rivalries outside of Ippo's immediate journey. The anime returned years later with Hajime no Ippo, New Challenger in 2009, and Hajime no Ippo, Rising in 2013, the latter spanning 25 episodes. Each season deepened the story while staying faithful to the manga's tone and pacing. International releases helped keep the franchise alive outside of Japan. In North America, the series was first licensed under the title Fighting Spirit, but sales were limited. That changed when Discotek Media relicensed the anime in 2020, releasing Blu-ray sets that included the original series, Champion Road, and Mashiba vs. Kimura. Streaming further boosted its accessibility. In 2013, Crunchyroll streamed the then new season Hajime no Ippo Rising. The original 2000 TV series was added to Crunchyroll in 2021, and then on Netflix in 2024, followed by New Challenger and Rising in 2025. Those actions made Hajime no Ippo more recognizable to wider audiences, and reminded those who might have missed it the first time that it existed. Hajime no Ippo is one of the greatest sports stories ever told. Having published 144 volumes and counting, its impact is unquestionable, as it has empowered thousands of readers, boxers, and creators. Morikawa is still working on the manga, taking a few brief breaks, but hasn't yet indicated when the story will be finished. Whether Ippo will stay forever retired or will one day reappear in the ring remains to be answered in the following chapters. What is definite is that Hajime no Ippo has made a permanent impression on the history of manga. Anime adaptation, evolution, and whereabouts. When Madhouse undertook the task of animating Hajime no Ippo in 2000, it was a gamble on a long-running manga that had already established a loyal readership but was still far from reaching the monumental milestones it would later achieve. Directed by Satoshi Nishimura, the show aired weekly on Nippon TV from October of that year to March 2002, spanning 75 episodes. From the outset, the adaptation demonstrated a clear respect for pacing and atmosphere. Instead of cramming the content, the series allowed matches to be delivered with tension, focusing on both the technical aspects of the boxing sport and the psychological torment of the fighters. The smoothness of the animation and the skillful use of nonverbal language, such as silence, commentary, and the crowd's reactions, intensified the drama to a scale new even to the readers who knew the manga. A steady rollout of home video releases followed the broadcast. Between 2001 and 2003, 25 DVD volumes were released in Japan, culminating in a bonus episode that had never been shown on television. This unaired 76th installment expanded Ippo's narrative. It provided the first hint that the production team viewed the anime not just as a faithful adaptation, but as a living extension of the story itself. Interest remained high enough that in April 2003, Nippon TV premiered the feature-length special Champion Road, which focused on Ippo's first title defense. Later that same year, fans were treated to Mashiba versus the original video animation, which examined a rivalry beyond the focus of the main protagonist extensively with Kimura. Both works served to support the notion that the world of Hajime no Ippo was expansive enough to accommodate multiple points of view and provide the secondary cast with meaningful arcs rather than merely appearing in supporting roles. After those additions, the franchise entered a period of dormancy until 2009, when Hajime no Ippo, New Challenger, was announced. Airing for 26 episodes, the second season reignited global attention. This installment shifted into higher-stakes territory, covering not only Ippo's ongoing defense of his featherweight championship, but also Takamura's attempt at a world title. By then, advances in animation gave the fights even more intensity, and the use of color, sound effects, and dynamic camera angles underscored the violence and exhaustion in the ring. Later that year, Rakia Koyama, the voice of Takamura, casually revealed on his blog that further episodes were already being considered, which kept speculation alive among longtime followers. The rumors were confirmed in 2013 when Weekly Shonen magazine officially announced a third season. Hajime no Ippo Rising debuted in October of that year and ran for 25 episodes until March 2014. The adapted manga utilized several critical matches that were vital to the original manga, combining them into an ongoing Ippo development, as well as storylines that focused on other members of the Kamogawa Gym. The outcome was a more collective story that made viewers remember that the series wasn't always about a single boxer. Although the series finale didn't cover the long-term future of Ippo, it managed to balance both victories and hardships equally, and viewers were content and willing to see more. Internationally, however, the anime encountered obstacles. Genyon Entertainment secured the North American license in 2003, releasing the series under the title Fighting Spirit. Over the span of 2 years, 15 DVDs were issued, each containing 5 episodes. They included Japanese, English, and Spanish audio tracks, which was a significant effort for the time, but the sales never reached blockbuster levels. Genyon also managed to release Champion Road in 2007, but the Mashiba vs. Kimura OVA wasn't localized, leaving a noticeable gap for overseas viewers. Today, with the entire anime available in both physical and streaming formats, Hajime no Ippo is more accessible than at any point in its history. Whether or not the future holds a 4th season, the 3 existing installments have ensured that Morikawa's tale continues to inspire through its animated form just as strongly as it did on the page. For years, accessibility was fragmented until Discotek Media stepped in. In September 2020, the company announced that it had acquired the license, and shortly after, it released a complete Blu-ray box set that finally unified the franchise in one package. Unlike earlier attempts, this release included the original 76 episodes, the DVD-exclusive 76th episode Champion Road, and Mashiba vs. Kimura, all in high definition and supported by multiple subtitle and dub options. It was a historic release among international fans, most of whom had been anticipating the anime as a whole for almost 20 years. The series became even more visible through streaming. In 2013, Crunchyroll began making the original episodes available, enabling it to reach a new generation of fans in the era of digital transformation in anime consumption. In 2024, the series found its way to Netflix, opening the gates for a broader mainstream audience. In 2025, New Challenger and Rising were also adapted for streaming, and the trilogy is complete among global audiences. The remake presented Ippo to a new generation of viewers who hadn't watched the series in the early 2000s, and it reminded old fans why the series was so impactful. Morikawa's narrative direction and character arcs. George Morikawa never forgets the themes that made the series such a big hit initially and keeps on developing the story without losing the themes of hard work, perseverance, and the very personal interpretation of stepping into the ring. The interesting thing about the new chapters is that they are written retrospectively about the development of the characters, especially that of Ippo Makunuchi, whose life has changed not as a combatant, but as an instructor, coach, and spectator to the sport he adores. Ippo's decision to leave professional boxing after his neurological health issues was one of the daring actions in the narrative. For a series built on the excitement of his matches, placing him in the role of coach seemed like a risky move. However, it allowed Morikawa to expand the universe, showcasing the sport from multiple perspectives while still keeping Ippo at its center. His mentorship of fighters like Itagaki and the Kamogawa Gym's new trainees has provided a different kind of intensity, one that relies less on punches thrown and more on psychological insight, strategy, and the passing down of knowledge. It also represents the idea that boxing is the collective community around the sport instead of just the sport itself. Meanwhile, the storyline continues to highlight the contemporaries of Ippo, particularly his opponents, as well as friends, such as Mamoru Takamura. The fact that Takamura chases world titles in different weight divisions is a major storyline, as it reflects the more modest dream that Ippo is about. His battles are full of entertainment and risk, which justify the sacrifices made to reach the very top. In the meantime, other characters, such as Ryo Mashiba and the legacy of Eiji Date, still remind the reader of the personal sacrifices involved in pursuing a boxing career and continue to serve as cautionary reflections of what Ippo himself might endure if he were to return. The possibility that Ippo will eventually step back into the ring continues to hang over the series. Recent developments have shown glimpses of his lingering potential. Subtle foreshadowing and sparring indicate that his retirement might not be final. Fans are still divided. Some would like him to return and conclude with a long-awaited fight between him and his old rival, Ichiro Miyata, while others think that his story has already reached its natural conclusion as a teacher. The confusion keeps readers wondering because Morikawa never rushes to any particular conclusions. The most notable aspect of the current phase of Hajime no Ippo is how it navigates the fine line between nostalgia and progression. Older readers can see traces of previous arcs in the plight of new fighters, but the series isn't a rework of old storylines. Every new character introduced reveals an alternate side of endurance and goals, while older warriors demonstrate how professions evolve with age and experience. The show is emotionally engaging as it doesn't hesitate to show the physical and mental cost of the game, the possibility of irreversible damage, injuries, burnout, and the chilling prospect of injury gives each match and each choice gravity. As it exists in 2025, Hajime no Ippo continues to succeed in its run because it honors the sport of boxing as much as it glorifies it. The story is less of an endless, long-running shonen series and more of a shifting account of lives shaped by the sport of boxing. Global fan community, sentiment, and speculation. The fan community of Hajime no Ippo is known to be very persistent and emotionally engaged, and the conversations have been known to span decades of expectancy. Recent debates in fan forums like Reddit, especially in the dedicated subreddit, are centered on the long breaks Morikawa takes and whether the story will be continued. The most popular posts are those that include words like hiatus or future, which demonstrates how worried readers are about the concept of closure. The tone of these threads typically strikes a balance between deep respect for the creator's legacy and concern that the end may come before certain long-awaited fights are realized. This is a recurring theme, the desire to see Ippo return to the ring. Takamura's ambitious path to multiple weight divisions and the inevitable clash between Ippo and Miyata remain pillars of speculation. Community theories are broad. They tend to break down the storytelling habits of Morikawa and offer new suggestions for the story. There's plenty of opinion that Ippo's eventual return is a deliberate attempt by the author to create complications and tension. At the same time, Others suggest that it was merely the result of the author's inability to balance the pacing with his own creative momentum. On Reddit, the most popular discussions often draw parallels between Ippo's potential arc and that of a real-world boxing career, highlighting the resilience of Ippo after a blow and the comeback of boxing champions who return stronger. Meanwhile, skepticism exists. Other fans worry that the manga has surpassed the stage at which such a comeback would be natural, and that further extension would dig its own grave. Such controversies have led to a situation where speculation has become an integral part of the community's culture and a ritual that keeps the series alive even when it's not being published. YouTube breakdowns of recent announcements, such as panel discussions or interviews with Morikawa, often highlight this duality of hope and doubt. Content creators who cover manga news tend to emphasize the scale of the fanbase's loyalty, pointing out that few series could endure this kind of release pattern and still maintain an active global audience. Viewers engage heavily in the comments, echoing Reddit conversations almost word for word. One side is convinced that the story will find a satisfying conclusion. At the same time, the other is resigned to the possibility of an indefinite limbo. Certain fans observe that the emotional investment in Ippo's journey is reflected in the motifs of perseverance in the manga itself, so the waiting aspect seems oddly appropriate, as though the readers themselves are being trained to be patient and resilient with. The other element of community sentiment is the shared memory of past hiatuses and how the series consistently returns. On Reddit and YouTube, fans recall previous breaks when something had been feared, and the manga then continued with increasing momentum. This trend has given rise to a reserved hope, a belief that as long as Morikawa can continue with the chapter writing, even intermittently, there's still a chance of a solution. The community tends to qualify this hope by milestones: the next world title match for Takamura, the maturation of Sendo's career, or the much-debated match between Ippo and Miata. All these points turn out to be a beacon, something to hold on to in the face of uncertainty. Franchise legacy, impact, and modern relevance. Only 2 years after its release in 1991, the series received the Kodansha Manga Award in the Shonen category, solidifying its place as an unmistakable part of its time's works. Almost 30 years later, the Kodansha again awarded the series a special award in 2019 in the 43rd Kodansha Manga Awards in the wake of the 110th anniversary of the publishing house. This was a rare recognition that described how the franchise was able to withstand changes in generations. The sales numbers speak volumes of their own survival and influence. By 2008, the manga had already sold over 73 million copies in circulation, a tremendous feat for a title that's so heavily focused on boxing, a sport often deemed niche in the global manga scene. This trend followed a steady course, reaching 96 million copies by the end of 2019. In July 2023, Hajime no Ippo entered the circle of manga that had surpassed the 100 million copy mark. That accomplishment places it alongside some iconic series like Astro Boy and Touch, proving it's one of the foundations of the medium. In the case of a series that has spanned over 1,400 chapters, published in more than 140 volumes, the circulation record is not only a testament to continuity, but also a strong sense of commitment among the fan base. Critical reception has consistently highlighted the series' balance of heart and technical detail. Anime viewers praise the first adaptation as one of the finest sports animes ever made, with Anime Academy rating it overwhelmingly positive across all 5 of its reviewers, who admired how its fight choreography and character development were seamlessly intertwined. Fanboy.com once listed the manga among the most underrated works, while IGN placed Hajime no Ippo rising in its roundup of the best anime series of the 2010s, showing that even decades after its debut, the story still resonated with modern audiences. Outside of print and screen, Hajime no Ippo has started to have an impact on real-life events that intersect fiction and sport. The very fact that the Dynamite Glove 2025 event was announced in Tokyo shows that the franchise has been deeply ingrained in the boxing culture. Scheduled to take place at Korakuen Hall, a venue synonymous with Japanese boxing, the event combines 7 live professional bouts with an exhibition of rare manga art, special anime-inspired visuals, and even a live talk session featuring creator Joji Morikawa. The fact that only 1,500 tickets are available has driven demand sky high, and the fact that international fans are being given access shows just how far the franchise has expanded internationally. This live boxing and manga celebration is indicative of how Hajime no Ippo has become a gateway for audiences to connect with boxing in its own right, with both an athletic competition and narrative heritage. Within the broader context of manga and anime, Hajime no Ippo remains a testament to the enduring relevance of perseverance, training, and emotional narrative over the decades. Marvelous verdict! And that wraps up our look at the curious journey of Hajime no Ippo. The series, from its legendary heights to frustrating stops and replayed moments, has become something bigger than a boxing narrative. It's a story of patience, perseverance, and the relationship between a creator and viewers who aren't about to see it fade away. Its future is unclear, but the excitement of the community is that Ippo's fight isn't over yet. Will the gloves be laced up again, or is that last bell already struck? Let us know your thoughts down below. And if you enjoyed our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Otherwise, until next time, stay curious and stay marvelous.
Yeah, man, that shit is awesome, dude. Damn, that was info that I didn't even know, man, that they sold like that many, man, like that, so many issues, and oh man, to where it even rivaled other animes to hit the million issue mark. So damn it, that was fascinating. Hajime no Ippo, to me, yeah, man, that's an anime that will hit you, man, and grab you, when it comes to on an emotional level too as well. Um, yeah, so it remains like encouraging and an inspiring masterpiece. So salute to the creators of that and to the creators of Ghost in the Shell, because yeah, like I said in the chat, that that these two animes right here has hella replay value. So this is the one, which we're about to conduct during movie night, during late night anime night, Kingdom. But with the next one I'm gonna show, yeah, this one definitely has hella replay value. For this story is like top of the line of a lot of animes that relates, that is in this genre. But the Ghost in the Shell, man, there's some Ghost in the Shell shit that I haven't seen yet. And I'm like, damn, I have not seen that. I was looking like he was showing it. I'm like, he's talking about Ghost in the Shell, such and such. And I'm like, oh, hell no. I'm like, damn. So, yeah, I'm definitely behind. And I would even like to go back to watch like the standalone complex again, because that was awesome. I think you said they had between 24 or 30 something episodes or whatever. But there are 20, 24 episodes in each season. There was yeah, 2 seasons. Yeah, I think that, yeah, he was correct on that. 2 long seasons. And I'm forgetting which one had the laughing man in it, because, as he expressed, as he said, that it has a strong sense of philosophy that will make you ponder, that basically um, is dealing with the realm of between of the connection of between cybernetics and reality, and the hacking capabilities that is able to occur during while one's trying to blend the two. Though when they come across the realization of it, that there's no, you won't have the same connection with your soul, won't have the same connection with your cybernet with your cybernetic body as it would with your human body. So yeah, shit like that, man. And them showing to the lady who's responsible for the music. Oh man, God bless her, man. God bless her, man, for the music, man, of Ghost in the Shell, because man, that whole team just coming together, synchronizing with each other like that, working in such harmony. with their creativity, coming into agreements of, hey, especially when it comes to the lady that composed the music, her and her team. Shit, that it was just marvelous. It just matched, and it gave you that futuristic vibe, to where you have no choice but to gravitate towards it and just feel yourself immersed in it. So yeah, so let's go ahead and show this other video before I go ahead and start this anime night. And this is a big one. Here we go. Shout out again to Marvelous Anime.
We think the fact that the eclipse is one of the worst fictional events in the history of literature is basically undisputed at this point. The visceral pain that it generated within us is something that we're taken to our graves. And speaking of graves, our main man Guts has just been put inside his. In chapter 383, we learned that Guts has been quote-unquote interred within the Kushan Stupa, in Daiba's words, not ours, and that he's going through some sort of transformative process. While many Berserk readers might think that this is another eclipse, we think it's actually the opposite. And so, in this video, we want to talk about the reverse eclipse. This event has the potential to absolutely morph the landscape of the series as we know it, but what exactly is it and how do we know it's happening? Well, stay with us to the end to find out because we're diving straight into it. The mechanics of the eclipse. To begin clarifying why we feel like Guts is going through a reverse eclipse, we need to first talk about the eclipse and its mechanics. Because as horrific as it was, there were several conditions that had to be met in order to trigger it, and understanding those conditions will better explain the events of chapter 383. Let's start by answering a basic question. What is an eclipse? To put it simply, it's a ritual that's triggered by a full solar eclipse every 216 years. Or rather, it triggers a full solar eclipse as a ritualistic condition. The reason eclipses are so rare in the Berserkverse is quite simple as well. They're ceremonies that lead to the birth of extraordinarily powerful deific figures, and to create such figures every time normal eclipses occur would simply ruin the cosmic balance of power. Each eclipse takes place when the total amount of negativity in humanity crosses a critical threshold, and the person chosen as its target is usually reborn as an aspect of said negativity. For instance, as the God Hand member Femto, Griffith represents an intense feeling of longing, that space where everything is implied but nothing is definite. Longing by itself isn't a negative emotion inherently, but the actions that certain people are willing to take in its name most certainly are. Griffith is the prime example of this, where he chose to seduce and take advantage of an innocent princess to satisfy his longing for Guts. Longing is such an intense emotion that it can make people who are sane commit some of the most insane crimes in existence, and once it takes hold of a person, it never lets go. This perfectly encapsulates Griffith as a person because once he put his mind to acquiring a kingdom, he found everything that made him stray away from that path, including a genuine friendship, to be an innate sin that he needed to purge himself of. His God Hand name reflects this as well because he's called Femto. A femtosecond is the smallest unit of time in existence, but even a femtosecond feels like an eternity to a person who longs for something or someone strongly enough. And speaking of sin, the eclipse doesn't exactly empower the sinful as much as it empowers those with the boundless potential to commit sinful acts. In the world of Berserk, nothing is as cut and dry as it first appears to be. Most people think that the apostles are demonic hedonists who live for murder and cannibalism, but there are apostles like Rosine who become demons without having any clear understanding of what they're doing. Rosine wasn't a sinful person, nor did she display any sinful traits growing up. One can argue that since she was believed to be a product of sexual assault, that she was marked by sin at birth, but that's more of a reflection of society than it is of her as a person. person. And yet, Rosine became one of the most heinous apostles in all of Berserk, a servant of sin who committed atrocities without fully understanding the nature of her actions. So when it comes to this thing called causality that Miura-sensei loved talking about, it's not so much that only criminals and heathens receive power-ups through it, it's the people who have the potential within them to become such kinds of people. And from that perspective, Griffith being chosen as the person around whom the fifth eclipse was centered makes perfect sense, because he might put on the appearance of the shimmering, pristine White Falcon of the battlefield, but deep down, he's as black-hearted as those he aims to replace. He commissions assassinations and kidnappings without batting an eyelid, and uses the people around him like a puppeteer uses puppets to put on a play. Griffith killed most of the conservative faction of Midland by trapping them within a tower, and then burning that tower down, calling it a checkmate from the standpoint of warfare. The ideals he espouses might be attractive, but the ideology he harbors is quite dangerous, and that's what makes him the perfect target for an eclipse. Once the powers that be decide whom to empower, they then proceed to lay down the overarching context of their lives to guide them to the moment of the eclipse. This context includes things like their personal and family history, their actions in their lives, and the kinds of interactions they have with other people. Up until the eclipse was triggered, Griffith thought that everything he'd done was born from his personal choice. But then the eclipse happened, and he learned that it was actually part of a much grander play being made by the true antagonist of Berserk, the idea of evil. The idea of evil is implied to be the reason that evil and things like the God Hand even exist in the Berserkverse, and so it's important for the idea to identify you as a key player in its plans. Once that happens, no matter how battered and bruised your body becomes or how you choose to live your life, you will reach a point where you feel so powerless that you do anything to not feel that way. It's possible for people to resist causality's call by constantly monitoring themselves and making choices based on the concept of morality, but that's usually too much to ask from a man with Griffith's ambitions. And so, we have two requirements set already. The first is the choice of causality, and the second is the 216-year time period. Once these two conditions are met, the Crimson Behelit is sent forth by the Abyss, and it finds its way to the intended person. It doesn't matter whether this person loses the Behelit by chance, via gambling, or theft. When the promised time arrives, it'll find its way back to its owner, which is exactly what happens with Griffith. He loses his Behelit in the Tower of Rebirth during his imprisonment. His jailer/torturer was admiring this little trinket he got off of his best playmate in decades when it hit him with the Limbo Hengoku and fell out of his hands. It then drifted into the sewers of Wyndham before resurfacing in the bed of the lake where Griffith's eclipse was eventually triggered. This is how Behelits function for apostles as well, but in the case of those chosen to become God Hand members, the effect is presumably multiplied. Once the Behelit has been recovered, the person it's meant for must be in a state of near death, either physically, mentally, emotionally, or all three ideally. The triggering mechanism of the Behelit is frighteningly simple. Once its owner feels like they have no options left and gives into their despair and desire for power, channeling it into the Behelit via their blood, it lets out a scream and summons an alternate dimension. When Griffith triggered his Behelit, he was running away from Guts and Casca and the rest of the Falcons because he felt that by staying with them any longer, he'd give up on his dream entirely. At that point in the story, Griffith had been broken beyond repair. His leg and wrist tendons had been cut off, ensuring he'd never hold a sword or even walk again. His tongue was taken from him, so he couldn't issue commands or charm his way into the hearts of the nobility. And even though he wasn't rescued by the people whose freedom he risked by seducing Princess Charlotte, he couldn't help but feel jealous of Guts' progress as a warrior and reflect upon his own helpless state. He knew he'd have to spend the rest of his life as a disabled person, and that just didn't sit right with him. When his escape was broken by a tumble into the lake, Griffith lamented the fact that he couldn't even start over properly, and when he saw Guts coming to rescue him, the person whom he blamed for all his misfortunes, the dam of his despair and desire broke free. As the rest of the Falcons pulled up to the scene, the scenery shifted from a setting sun to a land of tortured faces with a black sun overseeing things, which signaled the start of the eclipse. Several dozen apostles showed up for the rebirth ceremony, and the God Hand arrived shortly after. Initially, Griffith was apprehensive of them all because his experience told him that these things were dangerous. Very early on in the series, Griffith actually faced an apostle in the form of the immortal Zod, and that was the closest he's ever come to death. He knew that the existence of these beings couldn't be explained with rationality, and being a quote-unquote rational person, Griffith froze in fear. But that's when the God Hand worked their magic and won him over to their side so he could fulfill the final condition of the eclipse. In any demonic ritual, coercion doesn't work because the way causal business tends to play out in Berserk is through the will of the person in question. This will can operate consciously or unconsciously, and it can be as faint as simply wanting to stay alive instead of grasping all-consuming power. But the key is that the target of the ritual needs to accept its parameters of their own volition. In the case of apostles, those parameters include sacrificing the people that define the ritual target's humanity, which, so far, has been capped off at about 3 people. But in the case of a god hand, the sacrificial offering needs to be much bigger because the ritual's outcome depends on it. Apostles are individuals who gain the power of the abyss and transform into demons with unparalleled strength. They might share the same power source as the god hand, but their operating scale is much smaller, and most importantly, they remain within the physical world even after their transformation. The god hand is a purely metaphysical group of beings which exists solely within the deepest layers of the astral world. To join their ranks, one must transcend their physical form and turn into a concept from a person. This is why the sacrifice required for their creation is a lot larger in scope, and why their agreement in making said sacrifices is a necessary condition. Once this happens, nothing can stop an eclipse from reaching its natural conclusion, which is the unilateral slaughter of all ritual offerings and the transcendence of its target individual from a person to a deity. After agreeing to sacrifice the original Band of the Falcon, Griffith's physical form was enclosed within a cocoon, while his soul descended into the depths of the abyss for a meeting with the idea of evil. After that meeting, his body of flesh transformed into the form he'd chosen to accomplish his purpose and became a part of the astral world. Even the survival of a couple of sacrificial offerings in the form of Guts and Casca didn't impact his power levels because he'd already sent more than enough people to the abyss. Griffith proceeded to spend the next 2 years preparing for the next step in his evolution, which was regaining a body of flesh, but that's part of a separate ceremony which called for an even greater sacrifice. We'll talk about that as well in a few moments, but these are, broadly speaking, all the conditions one would need to fulfill in order to trigger and complete an eclipse cycle. One needs to be chosen by the idea of evil, possess a crimson behelit, create a group large enough to help them transcend their mortal flesh, and then fall into a deep despair that can serve as a launching pad for their new existence. It's that last part that might have drilled the idea of Guts going through an eclipse of his own into the heads of readers. Well, that and this other little tidbit from real life. Why people think Guts will go through an eclipse. One of the main reasons that many folks are wondering whether what's happening to Guts in Chapter 383 is an eclipse or not is because it's been compared to the eclipse by the director of the series. After Kentaro Miura's tragic death in 2021, there was doubt as to whether Berserk would even continue as a series. That was resolved when Studio Gaga announced that his childhood best friend and fellow mangaka, Koji Mori, would be taking over as series director, and the reason this decision was made was because after Miura, Mori is the one who knows the most about how Berserk is supposed to end. During the course of their friendship, Miura revealed several details about how he intended to conclude the series to Mori, and Studio Gaga felt confident enough in those details to allow Mori to continue his friend's work. It's been 4 years since he took over Berserk, and while the differences from Miura's original brilliance is quite evident, Mori has done a good job of keeping things on track so far. Right before the release of Chapter 383, he tweeted an update on the status of the story on X, and this is where the speculation regarding Guts' eclipse started to run wild. Up until this point, people had always assumed that something like that might happen because the series had set things up that way. Guts came into possession of a behelit in the very first arc of Berserk, and he continues to hold it to this day. He's been becoming increasingly depressed ever since Elfhelm was destroyed, with despair becoming his default setting. He isn't bleeding or near death right now, but that can change at any point in a series like Berserk. And most importantly, the possibility of him becoming a demon has been brought up too many times to be ignored. Heck, one of the God Hand members, Slan, has been keeping tabs on him since the eclipse because she finds the madness within him to be an agreeable ingredient for the current state of demonkind. When she appeared to him in Clip-Off, Slan tried to goad him into using the behelit he had on him because she wanted him to become the monster he was trying to defeat. But at that time, Guts' will won out, and his partner in crime, Skull Knight, anchored him to his purpose. Ever since Griffith kidnapped Casca, Guts has lost much of his sense of purpose and drifts aimlessly within the abyss of his own mind, which makes him a prime candidate for apostlehood. This is mainly why many Berserk fans believed for a long time that our hero would end up becoming one with the villain. sense, because everything has been pointing him in that direction, and with Mori tweeting that Chapter 383 will effectively be Guts' eclipse, that belief was strengthened further. However, that's exactly where the problem lies, because Mori's words were taken slightly out of context. What he meant by that tweet was that this next arc of the Black Swordsman's journey will be just as important as the eclipse, which is a completely different thing altogether. This doesn't mean that what started in Chapter 383 will be an eclipse. It'll be a ritual, yes, and in fact the ritual has already begun, but it won't entail things like him sacrificing his new group of friends to become as powerful as Griffith. In fact, it's the exact opposite, because if Guts does try to take the demonic route, he'll have defeated himself. And also, he's missing quite a few key components that would have made this ritual demonic in nature. Why Guts isn't going to become a demon. Before we explain the reverse eclipse, let's first talk about why what's happening to Guts isn't an eclipse-like ritual. We know that Daiba being involved in it doesn't make that feel credible, given his history with the Apostle Emperor Ganishka, but surprisingly enough, if Daiba was planning to put Guts' life in jeopardy, we'd have figured it out by now. That's because he'd have brought with him the one thing that's absolutely necessary to trigger such a ritual, which is the Behelit Guts was carrying with him. And before you ask how Daiba knows about Behelits, well, he is the guy who is obsessed with building a magical kingdom in this world, and oh, he also gave the Dread Emperor Ganishka his Behelit, in addition to constructing the man-made Behelit, so if anyone knows anything about them and how they work, it's Daiba. If he was working for the forces of evil, despite knowing that the Behelit would show up in front of Guts if he was destined to use it, Daiba would have brought it along with him if his aim was to push Guts further into the proverbial darkness. Instead, what he's done is put him in literal darkness by quote-unquote interring him within the ancient Kushan stupa. And now, he's waiting to see the results of Guts' self-reflection. You guys can hear our thoughts on all this from our breakdown of Chapter 383 and our predictions for Chapter 384, both of which are on our channel right now live. But keeping that aside, the Behelit isn't the only thing that's missing here. Many key components evolved in the Eclipse ritual are absent from Guts' residence within the stupa, which further strengthens our belief that what's happening to him isn't remotely related to demonkind. Let's take things from the top. In order to become entangled within the web of causality, a person needs to be identified and selected by the idea of evil and its agents as an agreeable person of interest. In the very first arc of Berserk, we're told by the God Hand itself that Guts doesn't fill that criteria. His determination and pain tolerance impressed Slan so much that she openly declared her wish to have him become quote-unquote one of theirs, but Conrad cut her off and said that he wasn't chosen by fate, so it wasn't possible. But let's assume that causality is more fluid than we give it credit for, and Guts somehow became eligible to turn into a demon along the way. In that case, what he needs to complete his transformation are two things: a Behelit and a sacrifice. The first of those two things has been in his possession since the final chapter of the Black Swordsman arc, but it's still not clear whether it belongs to him or someone else. Possession of a Behelit doesn't automatically make you eligible for apostlehood. The Slug Count's physician Vargas had the Count's Behelit on him for 7 years, and he wasn't even able to figure out what it was. Vargas was a bitter and broken man whose sole desire in life was to alleviate the despair of seeing his family being eaten in front of his eyes, and he hated the Count so much that he was willing to give his life to stop him, but those emotions didn't do jack to the Behelit. Guts has had the Behelit for about a year, and it hasn't responded to his desires at all. It only reacts to a massive gathering of evil astral energies, like when it nearly rearranged itself in Clip-Off, or when it reacted to the great roar of the astral world. If Guts is truly meant to become a demon, his Behelit would have shown up at the center of the lotus leaf within the Kushan stupa, but that didn't happen. But let's imagine for a second that we're jumping the gun and that the Behelit could make an appearance in the next chapter. In that case, what we're missing is a sacrifice, and to be completely honest with you guys, this is where the Guts Eclipse theory falls apart. That's because the one person who'd be perfect for his ritual has already been marked with a brand of sacrifice, and that's Casca. And people who already bear the brand cannot be reused as sacrificial offerings. Once again, we go back to the Black Swordsman arc where we saw a Behelit being used for the first time. After being decapitated by Guts, the Slug Count's immense despair stemming from his impending demise and his immense desire to keep on living activated his Behelit and pulled everyone around him into an interstice. He attempted to bargain with the God Hand, as he'd done before, and offer up Guts for the ritual, arguing that he would be the right kind of offering because he was an enemy of demonkind. The God Hand informed him that that was impossible because A, the ritual requires there's the death of someone so close to the Count that he'd cease being human without them, and B, Guts has already been offered as a sacrifice. Sure, that ritual wasn't exactly complete, seeing as he was still alive, but he cannot be branded by the God Hand once more because he's already bound for the Abyss. It's not a question of if he will end up joining the original Band of the Falcon within the Vortex of Souls, it's when, and for that reason, he was disqualified as an offering. It stands to reason that the same logic would apply when Guts himself tries using a Behelit, because yes, he's taken on many companions as of late and has good relations with them, but they don't define his humanity in the way Casca does. And since Casca already has the brand of sacrifice, she cannot be offered up to the idea, which complicates things even further. We could argue that maybe Puck or Shirke or Isidro or all of them could stand in as replacements, but do you really think that's possible? Yes, Guts has a lot of love for them and is grateful to them for keeping him in check, but he doesn't see them in the same light as Casca. And for this eclipse to work, he needs Casca and several other people who have become just as important to him as she is, because eclipses require mass sacrifices. If that was what was happening to him within the stupa, Daiba and Salat would have cleared out a while back, since the former would be aware of the conditions involved, but they haven't. They're standing outside the stupa, waiting for Guts, waiting to see the results of his quote-unquote self-reflection. And if we put everything we've addressed right now to the side once more, and assume that Guts is still going through some kind of evil ritual because those dreaded blood blobs showed up within the stupa, even then, an eclipse is not what's going on here. The main reason those blobs showing up gives us PTSD is because we've seen them twice before, and neither of those appearances were good for the story. The first time was during the incarnation ceremony, where they swallowed several hundred people in preparation for Griffith's return to the physical world. Those blood blobs served as a medium to gather up all the flesh and blood required for a God Hand to manifest physically, and trust us when we say the amount required was exorbitantly high. The second time those blood blobs showed up was during the destruction of Skellig Island, where they emerged from the depths like shadow demons and started attacking anyone who was at Elfhelm. These blood blobs appear to be aligned with the evil side of the astral world because they attack organic beings and assimilate them indiscriminately, and so them making an appearance within the stupa must mean Guts is going through some evil shit, right? Wrong, because there's one major difference between the blobs we've seen and the blobs we saw in chapter 383. The latter are eyeless and not targeting Guts' body. These differences might seem minuscule, but they make a ton of difference because it means they're not being controlled or compelled by evil forces, and that whatever is happening within the Kushan stupa is not an evil act. So if you put all this information together and zoom out of the eclipse perspective, you start seeing that the current arc of Berserk has nothing to do with demons and becoming part of their ranks. It's something entirely different and most likely the exact opposite of an eclipse, which is why we're calling it the reverse eclipse. Now that we've addressed everything we needed to address, let's dive straight into what this reverse eclipse will look like and what its purpose might be. The Reverse Eclipse, Mechanics and Purpose. In Chapter 383, we see Guts stumbling across a dark room and he falls onto a gigantic lotus leaf placed upon a pool of water. As this happens, he starts thinking about Griffith and Casca, first during their Falcon days and then after the Elfhelm incident. After he sees this second memory in front of his eyes, the walls start leaking blood blobs and the ground erupts with massive columns of those same blobs. The water underneath the lotus leaf starts gushing to the surface because turns out the damn thing is sinking. Right before Guts' face is swallowed by the water beneath, the lotus leaf clasps around him like a pair of hands, and both he and it sink into the pool. This moment echoes the one where Griffith's body enters a cocoon as his soul sinks into the abyss during the eclipse, and that makes the parallels between these rituals quite apparent. But this lotus snatch and sink is just that. A mere echo of the eclipse. We don't see Guts saying a single word that relates to the sacrificial oath that one makes when joining demonkind, and the only word he thinks of, which is finally, seems to be directed towards the fact that he thinks he's finally going to get some permanent rest. This moment is the exact opposite of what one wishes for when triggering an eclipse or any other demonic ritual, because those rituals are predicated upon the target's desire to continue living. Here, Guts wants to die because he feels like he can't do anything better than that. He gave it his all, and he failed. And his final thoughts reflect his true desire to go back to being a merry old band of mercenaries with his best buddy Griffith and his girlfriend Casca. Despair and desire are present here, but the form they take is the complete opposite of a prospective demon's, because Guts' despair isn't only for himself. He's despairing for his lost comrades. He's despairing for the comrades who are still alive but whom he cannot help, and most of all, he's despairing the loss of the best aspect of his friends. Griffith is a power-hungry demon right now, and Casca can't even look at him without without passing out. All of this would never have happened if Guts didn't selfishly try to acquire a dream of his own, but deep down inside, he's always been a lot like Griffith. In fact, they're two sides of the same coin, which is something we explore in another video called Will Guts Kill Griffith or Become Him? You should check that out, because in it, we explore what is perhaps the greatest paradox in the Berserkverse. But coming back to the stupa, the reason we bring up opposites so much is to show you that whatever's happening right now is clearly not the kind of demonic ritual we've seen so far, because it meets none of these conditions. Hell, even with the time dilation effect between the physical and astral planes, there's no way that 216 years have passed inside the stupa, while outside things have gone from day to night. The time requirement itself doesn't line up, and even the visual cues we get are similar to the eclipse and the incarnation ceremony, but they're not the same. Those blood blobs that show up in 383 are eyeless and not malicious for a reason. And if you ask us, that reason is that they belong to people who crossed over to the astral world not in search of power, but in search of enlightenment. Recall Skull Knight's description of the blobs that showed up at Elfhelm. He called them the remnants of the ancient original owners of Skellig Island, coming back to reclaim what was theirs with force and malice. That isn't verbatim what he said, but it's what he meant. And if that's the case, then the incarnation ceremony blood blobs were the exact same, which makes sense given St. Albion's violent and bloody history. But the Kushan Stupa is a different beast. Its location where several generations of Kushan high priests have interred themselves in accordance with real-world Buddhist traditions. In Buddhism, a monk is only interred within a stupa when their mortal lives approach their natural conclusion, and certain Buddhist monks even prepared for this by mummifying themselves in their final years. This is a place where a spiritual crossover takes place, and this crossover is pure in nature, symbolizing the detachment from the worries and cares of the physical world. How do we know that? Well, we just needed to take a good look at the leaf on the pool within the stupa, and it made sense. Because in Buddhism, the lotus leaf is a symbol of purity and enlightenment. A lotus roots in the muddy bed of a water body, but its leaves and buds prosper in the purity above said water body. It might grow from quote-unquote filth, but it always thrives once it rises above that filth. If that sounds familiar to a certain swordsman's character trajectory, then you're not wrong, because we believe this symbolism is quite intentional. When you consider the fact that the blood blobs and the lotus trap were sprung almost simultaneously, and that all of their symbolic values are related to ancient traditions of pursuing enlightenment and purity, you start to understand what Daiba meant by what he told Salat in 383. As the two of them were discussing Guts' predicament, Daiba stated that within the darkness, where one is deprived of all their physical senses, one has naught to do but gaze within the self, and he's waiting to see the madness that emerges from within Guts' inner self, because he believes it will be the difference maker in the coming war. The exterior of the Kushan Stupa is rooted in the physical world, but its interior is linked to the astral world. Guts is on his way to some location within the astral world right now, and what he does when he gets there will hold the answer to the fate of mankind. And personally, we think the person or entity that he's on his way to see right now is the opposite of the idea of evil, which we like to call the idea of good. We say this because the conditions for such a meeting seem to have been fulfilled. Guts entered the stupa despairing everything, but his thoughts weren't focused on himself. Rather, he was thinking about all the people he couldn't save, which is when things started going crazy. His self-reflective line of thought made him sink into the pool with those blood blobs covering him, and that certainly feels eclipsy, but we think that it's indicative of the fact that he's cleared the first hurdle to acquiring the power of goodness, getting the thumbs up from the ancestors of the Kushan Empire. If we assume that all Kushan high priests were at least somewhat moralistic in nature, then it stands to reason that their astral remnants would seek out someone who has similar ideals. Once that person enters the stupa and lands on the lotus leaf, they're evaluated. And if they're found agreeable, the leaf then takes them to see the idea of good, which mirrors how Griffith saw the idea of evil after being enveloped by a cocoon and quote-unquote sinking. The difference between his ceremony and Guts's is going to be defined by the concept of attachment, because the idea of evil preyed on his attachments to his dream to turn him into a nightmare, but the idea of good will probably do the opposite. Like we mentioned earlier, the lotus leaf represents detachment from the material world in Buddhist thought and tradition. Only when you're capable of removing the self from the equation and you let go of the things that attach you to the material world, are you able to achieve transcendental wisdom and peace. This sounds an awful lot like something Skull Knight once said to Guts with regards to Griffith's current state of existence. In chapter 237, right before he points him towards Elfhelm, Skull Knight tells Guts that challenging Griffith post-incarnation is next to impossible, because it would be akin to a story's character trying to challenge its author. As long as there are those who believe in whatever tiny aspect of Griffith they identify identify with, Griffith will remain absolute, because he's essentially painting on the canvas called Earth with a divine hand brush. But what he doesn't confirm explicitly is the fact that someone who is outside the scope of Griffith's story can hurt him, and we see this transpire in chapter 337 when our boy Rickert lands the slap of the century on the face of the Falcon of Light. This one moment is what served as a precursor to the reverse eclipse because it showed us that someone who has moved on from Griffith completely is immune to his absolute status. Rickert used to idolize Griffith when they were Falcons, but after the eclipse, he accepted his comrades' deaths, mourned them, and moved on. That's why he was so shocked and happy when Griffith returned to him post-incarnation, and so frustrated with himself when he learned the truth about the eclipse. But as Guts rightly pointed out, Rickert could never hate Griffith the same way he does because such hatred is born from an unhealthy obsession with its target. And while Rickert does regret not being able to fight alongside him, he is also not deluding himself into thinking he needs to join up on a quest for vengeance. Rickert knows where that path leads, and it's because he's not on that path that he's able to harm Griffith. So what we think will happen during this reverse eclipse is that Guts will meet the idea of good and finally let go of his obsession with getting revenge on Griffith. That's the sole reason he wasn't able to lay a finger on the guy when he showed up at Elfhelm, because if this is a story Griffith is writing, then Guts is still a prominent character within it. It's only when he detaches himself from Griffith that he stops being a part of his story, and at that point, he'll be able to do things no one imagined can be done to godlike figures. There's also a chance that Guts might see those Kushan priests as daimons during his journey, because daimons are the good equivalent of god-hand-like beings in Berserk. Flora turned into a daimon after her death because of the righteous life she lived, and her power was so great that even a dragon like Grunbeld couldn't pass through her flames. Daimons are humans that achieved hero status and died serving the concept of goodness within this universe, and while we're on their topic, there's a chance that Guts might become a daimon as well. Right now, he's entering the astral world as a physical entity, much like Griffith did when he triggered the eclipse. The latter turned into a metaphysical concept after the eclipse, so it's possible the former will turn into a powerful spirit as well, but that's a long shot, because right now, Griffith needs to be hit with both physical and astral powers working in tandem. That is why we think that ultimately, what will happen at the end of the reverse eclipse is that Guts will be bestowed with the power of goodness, much like Griffith was given the power of evil, and he'll emerge from the Kushan Stupa as a man changed for the better. He'll detach himself from his obsession and accept that saving the world takes precedence over vengeance. It's also possible that his brand of sacrifice will be removed in the process, because the series has implied that this is possible. When Guts first met Flora, she gave him a talisman to dampen its effects, but stated that she wasn't powerful enough to completely remove it anymore. This implies that there is a power that can get rid of the brand, and that power can only be the idea of good. So, after reaching the depths of the Lotus Pool and meeting this deity, Guts will emerge not as a demonic entity, but as an angelic warrior, whose power will most likely reverse the effects of the great roar of the astral world. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what we think the reverse eclipse is going to be like. We've seen its mechanics play out partially, and we've deciphered its true purpose. All that's left is to see the end product, and once that happens, Berserk can enter its endgame scenario properly. Marvelous verdict! Having said that, this is just what we think is going to happen. What do you guys think? Will there be a reverse eclipse in the coming chapters? Let us know in the comments down below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more Berserk content. We'll see you guys in the next one, so until then, stay safe and keep on struggling, strugglers.
Woo! Yes, sirs. Yes, that was good. Yes, this stream was just for basically, for the purpose of, gathering up, you guys, bringing people to the to the movie / anime night. But yeah, so these are called Geekverse news. So in this Geekverse news, it's pretty good, if you ask me. So, I'm glad I kind of put it together like this, how I lined it up. But can't wait for my boy Guts, man, to emerge out of that stupor. Um, but when he does emerge, it may end up shaking the astral realm, because the reason why this entity, who's to be the idea of good, the opposite idea of evil, because there's still good people on the earth, good it's like the yin and yang. You know what I mean? You can't have the yin without the yang or the yang without the yin. So, so yeah. And with that, this entity of good, of the idea of good, is gonna have to have him emerge to be damn near, or not close to the same power level as the void, whom seems to have powers that may, topple or rival Griffith's. So, so therefore, if his power, if his newfound power now, if it can harm Griffith, it can harm Void. If it can harm Void, then it can harm Griffith. So, which makes him a threat to the whole Godhead. But in order for him to emerge from that, I believe this entity is gonna bring into question, you know, of the fact that he's gonna need to, like my boy said over here in the marvelous team, the marvelous anime team, that he's gonna have to let go his obsession of getting his revenge on Griffith in order for him to ascend to his new power. You see, and with that, and that's gonna and they're gonna probably tell him too that they coming to him due to because that they're gonna see that he did not resort to falling into despair in the evil way, in taking the evil path like Griffith did when he sacrificed the whole band of the Hawk. So they're gonna bring that up about the fact of how he didn't, how they noticed that how this idea of good noticed that he didn't resort to using such power as because he has to bail it. He has his own bail it. So yeah, and yeah, my food's ready. I'm about to get it in. So yeah, I'm about to get this started. This anime night. All right. So yeah, so stay tuned. Give me a minute, and yeah, we'll be up and running. All right. Peace. I'm your guy Ray Hanma, one versus a million. Shout out to y'all over there on the YouTube side. Hit the like, share, subscribe, and follow. The link of the Rumble is in the description, right along with the Cash App. So, if you feel like, hey, you want to bust the Hama for us, go ahead, hit that for me. We greatly appreciate it. So, yeah. But I'm not your fan. I'm not your stand, for I am brother. Peace.
I am far from average. To me, it ain't no. I am far from average. To me, it ain't. He sees me.